I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you, Mark. I don't know if people out there in radio land can hear me, but I cannot hear you,
I can hear.
Mark.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I've been speaking for about 5 minutes and nobody could have heard a word that I said. So my apologies to everybody out there. I didn't realize that my mic was not hot. So we are here for the Monday night edition of the People Show on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio. And my guest, Tom Trester of the Civic Lab, is here with us. And we are going to be talking about something that he has shared with me that two people who I've spoken with about this issue, and they're going to be coming on at a future date to talk more about this. And I want to arrange to have them to come before 10 by 10 to win to share this information so that we, as a political action committee, can vote on whether or not we would support this. I think I can err on the side of caution to think that we would. So I want for Tom Treasure to help us to understand this. Tom, I've read through this. The RIFL Act come from the Rifle Coalition. That's the RIFL. And so this is an act about accountability. Now, for those of you who hug onto your guns and you want to have your guns and you sleep with your guns, this is not about taking your guns away from you. So, Tom, help us. Talk to me about what this is all about.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So, yeah, we're talking about the RIFL Act, which stands for Responsibility in Firearms Legislation, RIFL Act, and it's consumer protection. So, first of all, we know gun violence is real and pervasive in this state and in America. God forbid your listeners and viewers have been suffered through a gun violence act, either to their persons or to their loved ones. But sadly, we know that guns are a huge cost and cause of deaths of young people, and used in crime, obviously, over and over again. So we know gun violence is huge in the city of Chicago, in the state of Illinois, and the country of the United States. How big a deal is it? Well, in the state of Illinois, we're talking about 8,700 injuries, including suicides and crime and self wounds and the use of guns and firearms. 8,700 cases. It costs up to $20 billion a year. So we're talking about the cost of insurance, the cost of medical care, the cost of trauma. You can't really put a cost on a life, but when a family is disrupted and they lose their homes, I mean, and there's just endless horrors that come with gun violence, and it's estimated to be about, as I say, $20 billion a year in the state of Illinois. Now, that's the extent of the problem. So, unlike other industries, the gun manufacturers face no repercussions from the use of their products. And let me say that again. If I get on a step ladder and fall off it, I can sue the ladder company for being a poor product. It didn't have a big enough handle for me. I mean, it could be a frivolous lawsuit, I grant you, but I can still do it. And we're much more familiar with the tobacco industry, which for years, made a product that killed people, and they said no, it didn't, and the science said yes, it did. They had to pay. The opioid industry, maybe it's a little more fresh in people's consciousness. This is an industry that caused addiction and overdoses and huge payments from the opioid industry to try to make good on what their product has done to us. And that would be true for any of the car manufacturers. For years, cars were blowing up and people were dying in accidents until finally they were forced to put seatbelts. And now cars have all manner of devices. I don't know about you, but my car from 2020 beeps at me, honks at me, it zaps me, it gives me all kinds of warnings when I'm too close, you know what I'm saying? And I think the car manufacturers did it not so much because they love me and my safety, it's because they know they're liable. The manufacturers in America are liable for when their products go wrong, except for one industry, and that is the gun manufacturing industry. They were indemnified by a bill that was passed under George Bush II, and it's called PLACA, 2005. It's called the Protection and Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, PLACA, 2005. So even if a gun is used for a crime and the person got the gun illegally or whatever, you shouldn't have you shouldn't have a gun, it doesn't matter. You cannot hold the manufacturer. So that's the background. What does the RIFL Act do? It just simply says this to the gun manufacturers: if you want to do business in the state of Illinois, which is a big industry, a big state for the gun industry, you have to register into this system. And that means that if your gun is found at a crime or used in some act of violence, you will pay. Just like workman's compensation. The employers pay into a fund, you get injured on the job. And that caused the workplace to be much more safe than it was before the Workman's Comp Act was passed. So, factories have it to make sure their workplaces are safe, and if someone doesn't cut their thumb off, in some unsafe machine, the manufacturers in a factory would make sure that wouldn't happen. And so there's training and there's safeguards on the machines. All these things are done, you know what I'm saying, by industry, because they know that they're liable for the things that are happening for them negligence, except for the case of the gun manufacturers. So that's what this would do. It would cause, you could say, like a license, to do business. It has nothing to do with the gun owner. It doesn't, it's not a background check. It's nothing like that. It is nothing about coming for your guns. If you're someone who really believes in the Second Amendment, this is nothing about that. It's just simple, good business sense. That's the RIFL Act.
Well, I was reading through the link, which is in for those of you who would like to get more information. I've put that into the URL in our link, and so you can copy it there and read through it. That information is available to you. But in reading the information that you sent over to me, it says that 5 of the 7 manufacturers linked to the most gun injuries in Illinois are foreign companies. Illinois taxpayers effectively are subsidizing 5 or 7 of them, actually, companies that all of this violence that we see happening, all of this death related to guns that we see happening, companies are profiting. Now,
yes,
automobiles are regulated to the hilt, as they should be,
right,
to provide the most safe driving vehicles that will prevent the loss of life and prevent injury in case of an accident. I mean, there's a constant regulation there, and the car industries themselves are working hard to make their vehicles more safe so that they can reduce liability. The gun industry, which is, these weapons are not designed to do anything but destroy. They are designed to kill. They're not designed to tap you on the shoulder. They are designed to eliminate. And there is no willingness, and it is just defies my ability to conceive what is it that we have this appetite. We are 4% of the world's population. We have 40% of the world's guns. 39% of the people in this country own 400 million guns. 39% of the population of this country own 400 million guns. Defies my imagination.
Yeah, and it's actually even worse than the numbers might indicate, because the gun manufacturers use fear and racism to stoke their products. So it's it's a sad legacy from the Civil War, and the South shall rise again. But you know that in advertising, a lot of times it's aimed at, let me be blunt, at a white person who's afraid of a black person. So we see ads that are prey on that kind of fear and that kind of hatred, but we also see the gun industry doing major advertising after mass shootings. So to talk about the tragedy of a mass shooting, they use it callously to market their products, and their sales go up like 20 or 30%. There's a spike in sales when there's these tragedies. So it's a sickening situation. And for whatever reason, America loves its guns more than it loves its children. So this bill is now before the Illinois legislature, and it has a boatload of co-sponsors. This is a very popular bill, and I should say we have a black doctor, Dr. Douglas, Anthony Douglas, who got this idea to create the RIFL Act, and he crafted this huge coalition of dozens of organizations across the state, and he's gotten a huge interest from people all over the country. This would be unprecedented. He's blazing new ground here, the doctor is. And this is what a colleague of Dr. Douglas has said. His name is Dr. Selwyn Rogers. He's a trauma surgeon at the University of Chicago for 35 years, and he was the founding director of the University of Chicago's Trauma Center. So this is a gentleman who's seen a lot of violence, a lot of the result of guns and other kinds of violence. And he said he has watched the medicine drive down deaths from car crashes through a mix of engineering and policy mandates, including seatbelts. This is what you were talking about, airbags, collapsible columns, and better designed roads. Now, all those things came about, I guess you could say, through activism and capitalism. So you could say Ralph Nader sued the car industry, whatever it was, 60, 70 years ago, right? And then it caught on as a national movement. And now it's just common sense, for car manufacturers to do these things, like you mentioned, to build all these things in to their automobiles. But we have to remember, they didn't want to do it originally. You know what I'm saying? So right. Dr. Selwyn goes on, he argues that it's a similar kind of logic, but it's missing in firearms. He says, if there are penalties, people will make different choices. And he pointed out to the technology such as biometrics and microstamping that could make guns less likely to be used by anyone other than their owner. Now, so again, we're not saying you can't have a gun. We're just saying if you buy a gun, your child can't use the gun, or your insane mother-in-law, finds it in it's your gun. These are simple technology things, just from a wealth of things that could be done. He just mentions these two. And he said, so we use technology to make our lives more efficient. What about if we use the same technology and applied it to guns? That's a great question. So we have in the Illinois legislature, we have 26 sponsors in the Senate. So that's good. And 48 sponsors in the House. Now that's enough, by my math, to pass this bill. Here's the problem, and this is where maybe where your viewers can come in. The leadership is afraid to call this bill. Why are they afraid? Well, guess what? It's an election year, isn't it? And they're afraid that some of their downstate members, not just Democrats, but Republicans that might be in districts where they love their guns to pieces, might suffer if they voted for this, even though it's clearly the right thing to do. So there's a little fear, right? And they're afraid. They're afraid of the gun industry, and rightfully so. They're afraid of the NRA. They're afraid of losing their jobs. So we, on the side of righteousness and peace and love, we got to make them more afraid of us. You know, to your point earlier about your political organizing work, Mark, you know, politicians sometimes act, you know, in a sort of a visceral way, and they ask the question, can you help me or can you hurt me? You know, when they're trying to calculate what position to take. And if you can neither help me nor hurt me, then you are nothing to me. I may ignore you. As good as this bill is, we still have to put the pressure on. So come to Springfield with us on Tuesday, next Tuesday. And
so that's on the 26th.
Yeah, and people can find out more about this by going to the RIFL website that you have. You've got it there in the chat there, rifl-illinois.org, and you can you know, send us a message and we'll make sure you're included. But in the meantime, you can call. Don't wait for next week. Call your legislator tomorrow, you know, and tell them to get on the bandwagon, you know. And if they're already supporting, you can thank them and say that's the right thing to do. Much appreciated, right? And if they're not, you can say, we really want your name on this bill. We want this to be pushed. And if you want to do one extra thing, you can call the leadership. That would be the House Speaker, Mr. Welsh, Representative Welsh, or the Senate leader, Majority Leader, would be Senator Harmon, and call them, regardless if you're in their district or not, and tell them, call the bill. It's time. And when that happens, it's going to pass, and I'm sure it'll be litigated immediately. I mean, these guys have nothing but money to do this, but the authors of this bill have been very circumspect and very wise, in my opinion. They've checked in with Attorney General Kwame Raoul. They made sure that it's all above board, and they check with other lawyers who understand the Second Amendment, and assure us that yeah, you can sue it, but you're not really going to have grounds. This is really about commerce, and the state has the right to regulate its commerce. So people are asking this coalition from around the country, you know, like, hey, can we do this in Wisconsin? Can we do this in Colorado? You know what I'm saying? This would be a game changer for gun violence in America.
So the bill that is being proposed, and again, this is not going after people's guns. This is holding the manufacturers accountable for their products and designing their products, just like they hold appliance companies, appliance makers, or television makers, or chair makers. Every industry that produces a product is susceptible and vulnerable to accountability, except for the gun industry. Every single industry that there is. And so what this is saying to the gun industry, to the gun manufacturers, that they can be held accountable for their products that they produce. Now, this bill, if it passes, or when it passes here in Illinois, there is, so how does it impact those corporations or those manufacturers that are not in Illinois?
Well,
because I don't think we have any gun manufacturers in Illinois.
No, so the location of the manufacturer is irrelevant. It's you're selling your product. You could be on the moon. Doesn't matter. You're selling your product in the state. Therefore, you're required to have a license, and you're putting money into the fund. If you don't sell in Illinois, then it doesn't affect you. So this is why.
So in order for you to sell in Illinois, you have to get this license. You have to buy a license in order to sell in Illinois.
Right.
And you have to comply.
Right. So the legislation goes into the detail about, which division of the government of the Illinois government is going to, do the paperwork, All that is taken into account, but basically that's the model. So I want to sell my Berettas in the state of Illinois. My factory's in Germany. It doesn't matter. I must register, and now you know where I am, and there's I have to put money into the till, and my Beretta is used to kill your cousin illegally, and it's a shock and it's horror for your family. The gun is recovered at the scene of the crime or later on when the individual is arrested. They note that it's a Beretta, and they go to the manufacturer and says, okay, you must now compensate the Wallace family according to a schedule, and so there's all the details about all that. But otherwise, it's on you and your family to pay your medical bills if you have insurance. If you don't have insurance, deal with the trauma and the grief, and all the horrible things we know that would come from such a tragedy. But in this case, now, in this scenario, Beretta will pay, and there's a schedule for that. So that's all we're talking about, and if Beretta says, I don't think this is right, they don't have to sell their guns here. And they forego that revenue. And they may say, what, we do want to sell our guns, and we're going to put that trigger guard in there. You know what? Because we don't want to take the chance of our gun falling into the wrong hands. So you know what? We're going to start going down the seatbelt lane and the collapsible column lane. That's the hope.
So how does this impact? Let's say that the manufacturer said, you know what? I don't want a license to sell my guns there. I can sell my guns over in Iowa. I can sell my guns in Indiana. And, people from Illinois can come to Indiana, can come to Iowa.
Matter.
And
if that gun
purchase
ends
their
up
gun.
in Illinois, it doesn't matter where it's purchased or manufactured. If it ends up here and they're part of the system, they got to pay. So I guess it's the question of how valuable is the Illinois market, and it's a hugely profitable market. So it would be a very bad business decision, but I suppose it could be done. I suppose the manufacturers could boycott and just not sell guns here. But I think would be catastrophic for their industry. So, I mean, the hope is don't boycott the state, just comply. Come on, it's not going to be that big a deal. It's not nothing, but it's just the cost of doing business. Now, what will happen is, like everything else, they're going to pass that on to their customers. So, if you are buying that Beretta in Illinois, it might be $10 more now. I mean, they're just going to pass whatever their share is. They're going to figure it out and raise the price of their products so their profits aren't harmed. But you know what? It's the same for everything else. It costs money to make a car safe. It costs money to make the microwave safe so it doesn't blow up, from overheating. And we're okay with that. We should be okay with this.
So what has there been any polls done with the public about the popularity or pros or cons or for or against this legislation? Because it's really about accountability.
Yeah. Well, I can't say as I have seen any poll. I know there's 60 organizations and counting that are part of the larger coalition. And that includes everything from Citizen Action Illinois, Doctors for America, Strengthening Chicago's Youth, which is a massive coalition of youth-serving health organizations run by the Lori's Children's Hospital, Access Living, religious institutions of all manners.
Well, I'm looking at the list of people: Chicago Survivors, Safe Illinois, Safe Access to Everyone, Socially Responsible Surgery, University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine, Citizens Actions Illinois, Guns Down Friday, Free Route Operations, and on and on and on. There's several of these organizations.
So the League of Women Voters, is I'd say pretty conservative, mainstream organization. It's over 100 years old. The League of Women Voters is very thoughtful. When they endorse a bill, they have done so much homework. The League of Women Voters. I have a lot of respect for it. So they have studied this and decided that this would be a good thing for the state of Illinois. And they're nonpartisan. It's not a Democratic thing or a Republican thing. The league says this is good policy. This makes sense for the public's well-being, and it should happen. And of course, the Ann and Lori Robert Lori's Children's Hospital, $1 billion operation, totally dedicated to the health of children. They endorse it and think it's a good thing too, and so forth and so on. Um, so let's be proud Illinoisans. I mean, we've got some pretty smart people in our state, and some pretty wonderful legislators who are on the verge of making history. So let's like give them some love. So call your legislator and ask, if they're already on this bill, then give them much appreciation, and let them know that And if they're not sure, if your legislator is not sure, tell them, get on the bill. Get on this bill. It's super important. God forbid anyone on this call should ever be harmed by guns, or anyone we know. But sadly, we know that the chances are great, especially if you're in a Black community. Sadly, that the chances of gun violence are higher for you than me. So this would be a blessing for many people in our state, and totally doable. It's totally doable.
All right. Listen, I want to thank you for coming in, filling in for Dr. Anthony Douglas, and for Lake County Commissioner Sara Knizhnik, who were both going to come on the program. They're going to be coming on with us a little bit later on to talk more about this.
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
certainly want to know more about this. And I definitely want for them to come before the committee to explain this to the committee so that we can take a position on this. I certainly think that this is long overdue, and why it is that guns can go so unregulated in our society that is the most destructive. All right. Tom Dresser, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll be talking to you again soon.
All right, much appreciated. Everyone out there, stay safe.
Okay, Tom.
Stay strong. Bye.
All right, get out there. Okay, thanks so much, Tom. All right, folks, listen, this is a very important piece of legislation. And again, for those of you who are gun lovers and those of you who, are obsessed with your guns, this is not about taking guns away from you. This is about holding the gun manufacturers responsible for making their guns safer, so that we have less of the carnage. Here we are in 4% of the world's population in the United States of America. 4% of the world's population, yet we own 40% of the world's guns, and less than 39% of the population of the United States of America owns more than 400 million guns. Let that sink in. Less than 39% of the population of the United States of America owns 400 million guns. I can't even conceive it, don't understand it, won't even pretend to understand it, what this big love affair is with guns. Now, in this country, more than 2/3 of all gun-related deaths are by suicide. They're not even murders. More than 2/3 of all gun-related deaths in this country are by suicide. And the number one killer of children today are guns. And yet we don't want to do anything about guns. I don't get it. But I think that this piece of legislation that they are attempting to pass here in the state of Illinois is a great start to holding manufacturers responsible for their guns. All right, we're going to move on. And of course, you know that the Voting Rights Act of 1964 has actually been all but gutted of its name. And there is this outright effort to turn the clock back to pre-1964. Some might say to pre-1865 or 1863. And there is an argument for all of that. However, we have had to overcome in the Black community many times over, from slavery to the Civil War to the war in Vietnam to Iraq to what we are experiencing now. And I have two formidable guests that are going to be coming on to talk about someone who all of us know, and that is the late Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. And we all knew what he stood for. And in honor of him, there is a bill that is called the Jesse L. Jackson Sr. Young Voter Empowerment Law that is already down at the General Assembly. And I want to bring our guest on to talk more about it. Devorah Crable, who is the founder of KnowYourPowerVote.us, is my guest, and Dr. Joanne Roberts, who is with the coalition to get this bill passed. Welcome you both to the program. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having us. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. My honor and pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Dr. Roberts. If you can just explain what this law is and where it is in terms of getting passed in the General Assembly.
We have been working on this bill. The coalition for it originally was Senate Bill 1786, and now it's House Bill 4339. We've been working on this bill for almost 2 years. Senator Robert Peters initially sponsored the bill. Once it got to the House, it was an omnibus bill and it got into politics. So then Representative Duplique, with the guidance of Cam Buckner and Slaughter and the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Chris Welch, decided to do it as a standalone, and they passed it out of the House, and now it's in the Senate, and it's still House Bill 4339. This bill came about because I was working with Ms. Crable in the last election, and I focused on high school students. And the upshot of the matter was that a report came out from the Chicago Board of Elections stating that majority of the students in the city of Chicago who were registering to vote were on the north side, downtown, and lakefront. So I asked, what about the rest of them? And in doing some investigation, we soon discovered that the rest of them were having very limited participation in registering to vote. And then we did some national research and discovered the same thing. African-American children, minority children, they want to vote. They want to participate in the electoral process. They want to become politicians. But they knew nothing about how to vote, when to vote. And so I simply said, we have to do something about this. And having worked with Reverend Jackson for 40, some almost say 50 years, I went to his wife in Operation Push and said, we need to do a bill, because for the last 60 years, Reverend Jackson has traveled the country along with me and others, stating that when you graduate, you get a voter registration card in one hand and a diploma in the other hand. And your voter registration card indicates your responsibility and power you have in your hand to help be at the table and determine your future. So Senator Peters sponsored the bill, as I've indicated. And so we're at the end now. The bill is in the Senate, and we need to get the Senate to pass it so it can go to the governor and he can sign it. Let me tell you an interesting fact. During this process, we've had over 3,000 letters sent in by high school students and citizens. We have 40 plus organizations supporting us and saying we have to do this. And now we've almost created in this country a state of urgency. We have to build a political base in this time for everyone to register to vote. And we must train our children. So this is an opportunity time for our school districts to begin to teach, and the older people I've talked, teach civics, incorporate the importance of voting and the power of the vote so they can elect their own legislators And it's no clearer today than it has ever been what's just happened with the Supreme Court. So that's a synopsis of where we are and why we're on this program tonight. We need every person who's hearing this and a citizen of the state of Illinois to call their senator, call Senator Peters, call Senator Harmon, or call your local senator. It could be, I'm just using names, it could be Emil Jones, Senator Emil Jones. It could be Sims. It could be Maddie Hunter. It could be Kimberly Lightford. I'm just going down a list with no preference of all of the senators that you may know be your senator. It can be Robert Peters. So call them and say, let's get this bill passed. We need everyone across the state of Illinois to do this, because I think we all see the urgency and the importance of training our young people and giving them the opportunity to have a seat at the table so they can participate in this process. There's no doubt in my mind, and you can read the data, the majority school districts, the high-income school districts, and the school districts that understand power, they register their kids, they vote. And that was mirrored, in fact, when we talked to the Board of Election, and they were training high school students to come train them how to go back into their high schools and register students. But we looked at who the students were: North Side, Lakefront, and downtown. So we need help.
So this bill,
we need to stand up.
So this bill essentially does what? What does this bill do if this bill is passed?
It provides every high school in the state says that you must provide an opportunity for every eligible high school students in your school the opportunity to register to vote. And what does that mean? That means the civics teacher can teach instructions on the power of voting and call the Board of Election and have them come in and register the kids. The civics teacher can take the children down to the Board of Election, as in some high schools already do, and allow them to vote. If your high school is a site where voting is held, take the kids downstairs and give them the opportunity to register to vote and have a voice in determining who their state legislators are and who their local representatives are. Imagine if every high school student took the opportunity to vote and choose their local alderman. They can then go and work with their alderman and serve as a student advisory, saying these are the issues that we want you to help in our community. And that was even brought to bear during COVID, when we discovered we had limited access to drugstores. We had the food deserts were magnified. These are things that students themselves can get involved in and determine the future of their community. As Devorah and I worked with a group of students during the election, and once we just pulled out their iPhones and they registered online. I said, we didn't know we could do this. We didn't know we could do this. I said, now that you can vote, what would be one of the first things you would do? We would get rid of the liquor stores. We would get rid of the liquor stores. I said, so now you can go to your alderman and say, I want to work with you because we want these liquor stores out of our community. We have that? I said, yes. I said, don't come back and tell me, Dr. Roberts, nobody gives a blank about us. I said, because first you must care something about yourself. And once you understand the power, we can really do this. I said, you can really do this. So that's why we're pushing so hard to get this bill passed, so we can open up our minds of our children and allow them to take their seat at the table and become the leaders that's already within them, to help them to see the pathway to controlling their future and the community. Because everything that I said to them, everything around you, someone voted for. What do you mean by that? I said, someone voted to allocate money to pave your streets. Someone voted to allocate money to help pay your tuition, your bill for going to school, taxes. Someone voted for this. And I just went down a list. They just said, you're kidding me. And then we invited a senator to come and join us, LG Sims. And he came and joined. And the kids were just saying, This is our senator. I said, yes, this is your senator. And he talked to them and he explained to them that they could come to his office and have interns. They said, are you kidding? He said, no, I'm serious. So I'm just giving you a highlight of the importance of having the students that have the opportunity to register to vote in high school and put them on a pathway to political engagement.
Devorah, you know that, and thank you so much for that, but you know that you and I have been working together on these missions for the last couple of years, and we're going to be working even closer together. But it is always my contentions. I just spoke with a group of young people, and it is always my contention that you have to connect how things actually work. And I spoke to a group of young people. It was about 30 of them. And all young people, every person has a cell phone. And it is something that all of us are quite addicted to. So I asked the young people in there, before I even got to talking about voting and the importance of being registered to vote, I asked them all, how many of you have a cell phone? Every person has a cell phone. How important is your cell phone to you? Every person said your cell phone is important. I said, now, what if you lost the privilege or the right to have that cell phone? They all were sighing and were having, some frowns on their faces. I said, well, do you know that there was a policy that was put forth, not about making the phone, but there was a policy that was put forth that some people voted for in order for a development of a system for those very phones that you have. It was about politics, that people voted for you to have access to now these cell phones that we now have. They haven't always been around. They've only been around for a little more than 30 years. And that got their attention. Everything that I had to say after that point made sense to them about connecting them with the power that they have and the importance of being engaged. And I believe that that's what we have to do with young people, is we have to make it connect to their experience when we're talking with them about voting. I also think that we need to do more than just talking about voting. We have to talk about a strategy of voting, being able to consolidate power on how we can force politicians or public officials to do what it is that we want done in our communities that impact our lives. I think that we have to do that. Devorah.
I agree with everything that you have said, and certainly everything that Dr. Roberts has shared with us this evening. I think that one thing is eminently clear that we are witnessing at this moment in time. There is massive civics illiteracy, if you will, that is just running rampant. But to your point about understanding the story and having those checkpoints, when the administration put into jeopardy the SNAP benefits, everything snapped back into reality, right? And then they understood that it's your vote at the polls, based on the elected officials that you put into office, that can make the difference between you receiving your SNAP benefits or not. Now, that's the kind of a story that brings it real and makes it very present in real time. What we're hoping will also happen as a result of the Senate Bill 4339 is that it will strengthen and broaden the commitment to civics education. It's already being done, yes, but in a lot of situations, as Dr. Roberts has shared, in the Black and Brown communities, the same level of commitment and engagement is not there. We have to make sure that all of our students are well prepared and equipped to be civically engaged citizens that understand their rights and their privilege of voting. That privilege to vote is under attack now. As you have adequately said, with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it has been severely gutted. On August the 6th, it turned 61. Where will you stand? Do you want to have a representative government where you have a voice and a say in the matter? This administration is saying we want to roll back the opportunity that Dr. Roberts is talking about, having a seat at the table is being pulled back. Your chair is being pulled back. The only way that we can stop that is through having massive voter registration right now, so that we have millions and millions and millions of people at the polls on November 3rd when the midterm election moves forward, and that you are prepared to drop your ballot in the box behind the candidate that you know will best represent your interest. It is critical. Every vote matters. Every vote counts. And I want to bring up, and many people might remember this, the Al Gore and George Bush election. It was 500, I believe, 36 votes that made the difference between a win and a loss. Every single vote matters and counts. And we can lift up thousands of cases where just a handful of votes made a significant difference. Right here in Chicago, it was African-American citizens that rose up en masse and elected the first African-American mayor in the city of Chicago, the inimitable Harold Washington. So if we could have another candidate like that, I think it would be very easy to do, but let's not have a shallow or short memory. That was real. It's our living history and memory that we can reactivate that kind of enthusiasm, that level of engagement, that example, and move it forward now going forward to impact the November 3rd election.
Well, I certainly think that it is critical because we are in a very unique setting in terms of Black people being in a major metropolitan region that we are in here in Chicago, Cook County, and the state of Illinois. We still have the largest number of registered voters than any other ethnic group in Chicago and Cook County. We still have the largest number of unregistered voters of young people as well as adults than any other group. And we can consolidate power. And when I use that term consolidate, we can consolidate power to determine our own destiny. And I think that that is what has gone amiss, or certainly gone short of helping us to understand that strategically, that the power that we have, or certainly we have the numbers, and to help young people know that you also have the numbers and you have a great voice, because when a great number of young people stand up, public representatives listen. Martin Luther King was 26 years old when he was thrust into the civil rights movement. Jesse Jackson was 19 years old. So young people have a great deal of influence. And I think that we are coming up on our third annual Juneteenth celebration. And I put out a post that there should be the central theme of any observance of Juneteenth should be voter registration. There should not be a Juneteenth event that there is not a heavy emphasis on voter registration. I think that we need to make that the thematic thrust for Juneteenth observance here in Chicago and wherever our voices can be.
And you know I'm saying touche, touche, touche. And I'm so glad you lifted up the statistics regarding the number of unregistered high school students. You underscore the importance of this legislation and why it is important that we have people to make those phone calls, submit letters of support this month before Juneteenth, before the end of this month, before Memorial Day, before this General Assembly session closes. We need individuals to give Senator Roberts a call, and I'm going to give you his phone number. His phone number is 217-782-5338. That's Senator Roberts, and he is the one who is the key sponsor of this legislation. He started it 2 years ago when it was Senate Bill 1786, and now it is going in as a standalone bill, which guarantees a greater chance of passage because it is not attached to anything else. So we can move this powerfully forward. But we need people to let your senators know that it is important to you, and this is mandatory legislation, so we can engage our students in the democratic process. And I'm going to get to those
Repeat
stories.
that number again.
I'm going to give you Senator Harmon's phone number as well. And he is the head of the Senate at 217 782 8176. 782 8176. And Senator Peters is 217 782 5338. Let's inundate their offices with these phone calls. You can also submit a letter of support on my website at knowyourpowervote.us, kypvote.us. Again, knowyourpowervote.us. Either way you put it, it'll get you where you need to be. When you get there, you will also see a video featuring Dr. Roberts and everyone involved with this legislation, so you can hear their voices as to why this bill is important and you need to pass it and make sure it gets passed by your energy, by your demand this month in the General Assembly. But the other thing I wanted to share with you when you talk about those Juneteenth celebrations and making things connect, I would encourage and I invite everyone who's having any kind of a celebration. You don't even have to wait for a celebration. At your dining room table, at your kitchen table, at the barbecues and family events or community events, sit down and share your personal story why voting is important. Maybe there were some difficulties. Maybe you had relatives that had to count the jelly beans in the jar in order to be able to vote, or had to pay a poll tax. And, can I roll back this for 1 minute, Dr. Roberts, on this one?
Yes, go ahead.
In 1786, the bill was initially Senate Bill 1786. Do you know what was happening in 1786? Daniel Shays, he was a farmer in Massachusetts who said, whoa, hold it right here. The small farmers, the little people were getting taxed and had to pay poll taxes that were so high that it prohibited them from being able to have a reasonable, life and be able to generate income to sustain their families in their desired lifestyles. So this isn't anything new. He stood up and shouted. He had a gunned revolution that did not work, but what he started was enough of an impact to make sure when the Constitution was written that we had a House and a Senate. The House to represent the little man's voice, and of course the Senate, which back then the senators were being appointed and represented the elite and the wealthy class. So that's when the equitable distribution of resources, wealth, and representation first started coming into play behind that Shays Revolution in 1786, the original number of this bill. But right now, it is Senate Bill 4339. Dr. Roberts, how inspiring is that? That your work has historical moorings and that we can now move forward. So right now, today.
Let me give you another tidbit too. As we look toward Brown versus the Board of Education, we fought so hard to integrate these schools, and our schools now are more segregated now than they were before Brown versus Board of Education. So why am I bringing up all of this voting, all of the rights to vote, the ability to express your opinion and maintain your position in society depends on how we educate our children to understand the power they have with that vote. So voting is the act, but understanding the power of that act, because as those of you may remember during the civil rights movement, once they were able to get the voting in place and to have the right to vote, they had to educate the community on what? How to vote. The things that Mr. Wallace talked about earlier, how to select the right candidate, who to run. All of that's embedded into the process of voting, so that when you go to the cast a ballot, you have an understanding of which candidate you want and why do we want him? What are we asking him to do? So this is a process. And for the most part, the Black and brown kids in this country are locked out. The research will tell you those students in the South who are closer to understanding that their grandmothers and grandfathers died, they were more apt to vote than the students in the North, because they are removed from that first wave of standing up and fighting and the dogs and all the sit-ins. but that story runs deep still in the southern states where most of this action took place. So we again have to bridge that gap in helping all kids understand why it's so important to vote and why grandma literally gave her life so that her children and the community had the understanding of why they needed to vote. After the legislation came into pact, we began to have our first Black mayors. Mayor Hatchett here in Gary. We had Stokes. Help me out. I may make a mistakes. Mayor Stokes.
We had
Harold. These people, these Black men and women who stood up and represented us, they got there through pain and suffering. And people standing up and fighting and going to the polls and voting. And so we have to train this generation the same way that you and I were trained and a part of why we are fight today and continue to fight. Because if we don't, we will definitely lose. But if we fight, we will definitely win. So we need to have every high school in this country. But right now we're focusing on Illinois, registering our students to vote and teaching them the power to vote and why voting is so important. And what does that give them the opportunity to determine their legislators, to participate in how policy is made, and to get the things they need for their community and their future.
Reverend Jackson always told us that we've never lost a fight when we fought, and you never win a fight when you don't fight. So we have to get into the fight. I want to play, you sent me a little clip, and I want to play this because I think it's important that they see some of the testimonials that you had in this video clip that you sent me, Devorah.
Yes. We are inside of the 60th anniversary of the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
This voting gave us access to power that people didn't want us to have.
It prohibits racial discrimination in voting.
When I get home, I say, mijo, son, you know, we got to go ahead. You got to get this registered so they can be in the system.
And stands as a landmark victory in our fight for justice and equality.
In order to get people more civically engaged, we need to make them understand that every policy is personal and that every single vote affects them personally.
I'm Devorah Crable, founder of Know Your Power Vote, inviting you to honor those who fought and in many cases died for our right to vote by sharing your voting legacy.
I was one of the 18-year-olds that first time voted, and they clapped for me. Now I'm clapping for them.
Voting should be a family affair, just like we talk about getting ready to watch the Super Bowl, getting ready to watch the World Series, getting ready to watch Sunday football and Monday night football. We should be motivated and talking in our circles about getting ready to vote.
Come too far. We made too much progress to stop now or to go back, but we must move forward.
Yep, Congressman John Lewis. Now we need to be supporting his bill now.
Absolutely. So where is, as it's already passed the House, and do you know how much support it has in the Senate?
It has tremendous support. We were just looking at the names of the many senators who've already signed on. And it's my understanding that the president of the Senate has made a commitment that he will move this bill forward. So we just want to make sure that this happens, because if we don't allow, we must let them know that we're still out here. We honor what they're doing. We're grateful for their help, but we want to give them all the voice and platform that they need to ensure that this bill passes and whatever support they need. Yes, many senators have already signed on in the Senate to pass this bill. It's now with the executive committee, and we have been talking with members on the executive committee to ensure that this bill moves out of committee into the floor so that they can vote on it. But again, it's all politics. It's all politics. That's why we're asking tonight for everyone to call their senator. We have given you the number for Senator Harman. Again, that's 217-782-8176. He's the president of the Senate. Call his phone and ask him to continue with his commitment to help move this bill forward and for it to pass. Devorah has given you Senator Robert Peters' number, and she can repeat that again and call him. But there are other senators that's out here that have signed off on this bill. And so you may feel free to call whoever your senator is. If you have the political contact and power to pick up the phone and call your senator on speed dial, call him and say, listen, I need you to make sure this bill passed. If you're a representative of an organization, call the senators and ask them to pass this bill. Anyone who has a telephone can look up their senator and call and say, we need you to pass this bill. We've given you the Senate president, and we've given you Senator Robert Peters. Would you repeat Peters' number again? I have the Chicago number, and you have the Springfield number.
I have the Springfield number at 217-782-5338. They're in Springfield right now as we speak. They're in the closing final days of this session. We want this bill passed this session before May 31st. What, Mark, I want people to really appreciate inside of this conversation, you were witnessing the democratic process in action. Dr. Roberts had the wherewithal to say, you know what? Reverend Jackson was on point and on purpose, and now is the time for us to make this bill a reality. Then she pulled together a coalition of individuals, core individuals, to make sure that we're able to move this together in a rapid pace and monolithically, all of us moving on point, on purpose with one mission and one message. We have gone down to Springfield. We've gone to advocacy law days. We have been on the phone calls, getting people on board from organizations, even from the teachers union, the Coalition for African American Leaders. And under their umbrella, there are at least 15 different organizations, all are in action around this bill. We've had the fraternities and sororities to come on board with us. Specifically, the Deltas have been a very powerful force in mobilizing this initiative. And many thanks go out to many individuals who put support, specifically the young people, Dr. Roberts, who sat down and submitted letters going through the website, knowyourpowervote.us, and it's still up, still live now, and you can still drop those letters in. This is how you make this system work. Our democracy, it works when the people work it, and this is how it works.
Well, is there a lobby day? And has there been any effort or thought about getting busloads of young people to take them down to Springfield to push this?
We did that. We in the previous lobby today, there's another organization that works with us, Chicago Votes. They have taken students down on lobby day, and they have lobbied for this bill. We have people going down this week, in fact, and next week, lobbying for this bill. So we have been actively lobbying with students and individuals getting this bill passed. Well, if there are any other lobbying organizations that want to join us, please feel free to do so. We are now, as we say, in the last stretch, and we are all hands on deck. Everyone's on board. So if you're hearing this and say, I think I want to join and be a part of this, and I'm a strong lobbyist, or I know someone who's a lobbyist and I want to push this forward, please join us. But yes, we have been engaging lobbying. Devorah, you went down and lobbied, I know.
I was down there lobbying, my first time ever going down to lobby for someone with our colleagues, Latina Brady Pettis, Get Out the Vote for Teens. She is the woman who started this whole movement with getting young people out to register to vote in September. And she has a big event every year. So there's a tight coalition, but then a much broader coalition of individuals that have come on board to make sure that we are mobilized in the right direction, and that these legislators know that support for this bill is broad-based, it is diverse, and people want it, and they want it now. The sense of urgency is why we need you to make those phone calls right now. As I said earlier, the General Assembly closes this session on May the 31st. So before Memorial Day, before the Memorial Day weekend holiday, let's make sure we get those phone calls in. And when you're at your Memorial Day holiday celebrations, remember that your vote matters. And remember that you need to share this message with all of your family members. And I'll offer you this as well. If you go to my website at knowyourpowervote.us, not only can you register to vote at the top of the page on the red bar, right at the top of the page, you can register to vote online very quickly within 5 minutes. But if you scroll down just a little bit, there is a tab that has a QR code to every online voter registration site in the country. On Juneteenth, on Memorial Day holiday weekend, get on the phone with all of your friends, family, loved ones, people you like, people you don't like. We want everybody in the process, in the game of voting. So go around the country, fire everybody up, get them on a Zoom call like we are right now, and have them to register to vote. This is a game of numbers, sheer numbers. And you know there will be some shenanigans. So we need to have as many people registered to vote as possible. Let's get this done. Let's get it done in rapid pace and form, and make sure you share with the young people why it is important, why you have a vested interest in this democratic process, and why it is important specifically for us as Black people in this country, Black and brown people in this country, disenfranchised people in this country, to ensure that our seat does not get pulled out from the table. We're in, we're all in, stand 10 toes, 2 heels down, and get this job done.
Well, we absolutely have to do that. We also have to keep in mind that they are going to try every trick that there is to diminish the vote. They know that there is going to be a wave of voters this coming in the midterms. So there is going to be all kinds of efforts to change polling places and all of that sort of stuff. So we need to have a strategy so that people know where their polling places are. We have to teach people how to check to find out where their polling places are, to make sure that that at the last minute that they don't show up someplace and they have to go somewhere else and may not get an opportunity to vote. All of this stuff is going to happen, as it did down in Texas. And so we certainly need to take a lesson from what happened in Texas, that we have to be holistically prepared. We have to register the vote, and then we have to make sure that we have everything in place to execute. It's just like whenever Dr. King or Reverend Jackson, that they were going to go out and protest, they made sure that they had lawyers in place to bail them out of jail if they're going to get out, get arrested, and all of those other things that they were needed to make sure that they could execute what they needed to execute. And I believe that we have to make sure that we leave no stone unturned to get people registered to vote, and to make sure that people can and do vote in mass numbers, because I know that the opposition knows that the wave is coming. Otherwise, they would not be taking the efforts that they're taking to diminish our representation, to diminish the power of our vote. That's just how powerful it is. And I think that for all those people who say that voting doesn't matter, if it didn't matter, they wouldn't be spending these kinds of efforts with the lights on, as I say, to take away the power of the vote.
Exactly. And the other thing we must pay attention to, so that we don't fall victim to voter suppression, make sure that you're still on the rolls. This is why you need to verify your voter status. Make sure you are still on the rolls, and make sure.
Is that on your website? Do you have?
Yes, it is. Go to the same site. Go to the same place. Right at the top, when you go to the Illinois site, you can just go in and make sure that you're still on the rolls, and verify your polling site. Sometimes they change them, legitimately or illegitimately. Okay. So you just want to make sure that where you're going to vote is the same place that you traditionally have been going to vote. That's how you beat the game of voter suppression. But here's the other big thing. Start planning now what your game plan is going to be on election day, or if you're going to be voting early, if you're going to do a mail-in ballot. All that stuff needs to be taken care of way in advance. So make sure you pay attention to those details as well.
Also, if you are 17 and you can still pre-register and you can vote if you turn 18 by the time of the day to vote. So one of the things that we want to make sure our high school students understand, if you're in a high school and there's no one there talking about voting and you want to get engaged, if you are going to be 17, if you're 17 and will be 18 on or before the day you vote, you can actually go to the polls and register and vote. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's right. So we need to make sure our high school students get involved. Now, one more fact I want to share with you. Our governor, Pritzker, passed a law that says if you're 16 in the state of Illinois, you can pre-register to vote. And he also passed a law that says on the day of voting, a national, local, or midterm or special elections, students can leave school for 2 hours to participate in the voting process. Most high schools that we attended didn't even know this existed. And one of the teachers said to me, "We are registering our kids. You mean to tell me?" I said, "Yes. You can leave school for 2 hours and go register. And these are excused absences. They're not, they're excused. So you already have on the books a process that allows you to pre-register, passed by the governor. A process passed by the governor gives you 2 hours to vote. And in between, you have all of these kids that are not registered to vote. That's ludicrous. We must break that wall down and allow our students to benefit from the process that the governor has already put in place. And many of you say, "Well, Dr. Roberts, we have all of this." No, intentionally not allowing students to register to vote and participate in the process is a power and control technique. These students have power, and the political structure does not want all of this power released because the political game will change. The kids are asking the question, "Well, what have you done for me? You're my alderman. What have you done for me? You're my state rep. What have you done for me?" Well, if they are voting and understand their power, the question becomes, well, maybe we need to consider this and this and this. Break that wall of silence and locked out knowledge down and let the knowledge come in so the children can pre-register to vote, understand their power, and take the 2 hours and go vote. They can create their own slate right there in school. But here's what we're going to vote for. And here's why we're going to vote for. The power is in the hand of the students once we break this wall down and allow the students to engage in the process civically, to choose their leaders, to choose their future, and understand the power of their vote. The political climate changes.
So the governor is willing to and ready to sign this bill as soon as it passes out of the Senate?
Yes. 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 We have fought to get it through the House, and I want to say on your show, the Speaker of the House, Chris Walsh, is a dynamic leader. And when he said he was going to pass this bill, he did it, and he got it out of the House. So we need to commend him for taking that stand and getting this done. Harmon has said that he will do the same. So we commend him, but we want to make sure it happens. And so we call him, thank him, and ask him to put the bow on the package so that it can go to the governor.
Well, you know, I take a different approach when it comes to people who are serving in public office because, you know, it is their responsibility to respond to our demands. I know that we've done a little bit too much celebritizing of public officials. And I am not in that camp. And I think that we need to move away from celebritizing public officials and have them to understand that they are to operate under our demands, not under that they're doing us a favor. But I think that they also have to understand, and we have to understand, and we have to help, young people understand that you have to be a threat. Because as one of my other associates would say, is that politicians look at whether you can help them or you can hurt them. If you could do one of those two things, then they have your attention. But we need to be a threat to that process, not necessarily in a nasty way, but to understand that they are there to work on our behalf. We need to understand what power is. Unfortunately, the other side, the opposition, understands that, and they're using it. They're using it for all of the wrong reasons. We need to have the understanding it's the same methodology, but we want to use it for the greater good, for the common good. But we really need to get away from this ideology of celebritizing politicians. I am not in that camp, and I think we need to move away from that. Chris Welch did what he's supposed to do. Harmon needs to do what he's supposed to do, and we need to help them to and make them understand that that's what we are expecting, and we are not accepting anything less than that. That's my position.
And that's
why we're here, to continue putting the pressure on. That's why we need everyone in the sound of our voice to call them and let them know that we are out here still requesting that they, demanding, whatever adjective you want to use, that they pass this bill and they pass it before the Senate adjourns. I understand very well what you've said, Mr. Wallace. I believe philosophically some of the same concepts and ideas that drives us to do what we do here today. So yes, that's why we're here. We understand we've got to keep the pressure on until this bill is passed. So we need everyone to call Harmon and Peters and or any of the other senators. I'll give you a few as we come to Robert Peters, Matty Hunter, L.G. Sims, Karina Villa, Mike Simmons, Kimberly Lightford, Garcia Guzman, Rachel Ventura, and the list goes on and on. But those are some of the senators that have stepped forward and become signed off already. Emil Jones, I think he's on the other list. So there are a list of them that have already stepped forward to carry this water.
So,
all right, that's great. That's great. That's fantastic.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the power and the impact of those phone calls goes a long way. Just imagine for a moment that if Senator Harmon finds out or hears from Senator Hunter and Sims and Alvarez, all the people that Dr. Roberts just listed, that I'm getting phone calls like 20 people every 10 minutes wanting to get this bill passed. What do you think he's going to do? He's going to make sure before that gavel drops on the close of this session that bill is going to be passed, because he doesn't want to have to hear or see you standing on his doorstep saying, why didn't you pass the bill? And that's the importance of understanding how we hold our elected officials accountable. The process of getting the right person in office does not end once you drop that ballot in the box and they score a victory. You have to continue to apply the pressure, keep your foot on the gas to make sure they continue to deliver what your needs and wants are in your respective communities.
Can never let up. Can never let up. Reverend Jackson said, somebody has to be the agitator. Your clothes don't get clean unless the agitator in your wash machine is working. So somebody got to be the agitator.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So,
I remember him. I remember him saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody said, what's the agitator in the wash machine, right?
So that's why I share with the coalition. We've got to stay out here, stay focused until we get this bill passed. But we need everyone making these phone calls and calling many of the senators that we've named tonight. And if we've missed a few, call them and let them know we want this bill passed. And we will all celebrate, hopefully, by the end of May, that this bill is passed and headed to the governor's desk. I traveled with Reverend Jackson for many, many years, and I was on the forefront with him writing and developing his original Push Excel primer. So we have a lot of history together, a lot of high schools where he stood and advocated for this bill for students to have their voter registration, because one thing he understood was power, and he also understood the power that young people had. And if you look at the civil rights movement, as we alluded to earlier, the civil rights movement was ran by young people.
Absolutely. That's what I said. Dr. King was 26 years old.
He was what, 19?
Mm-hmm. Reverend Jackson was 19, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes, Reverend Jackson was 19. Dr. King was 26 years old. So you know that's where it is. But we need to connect all of these. I believe that what has happened, and according to Scripture, that what somebody meant for bad is going to turn out for good. And I believe that this is something that we may have needed, this motivation, because we've kind of been sitting a little complacent. But I think that this is a time that it is motivating people all across generational lines of the importance of one being engaged, first of all, you need to be registered to vote, to be engaged in that process. And then we need to march to the polls in record numbers to reject what it is that we don't want and to support those things that we do want. And that is our voice, is in our vote. And we have to make that loud and clear in every place you go. And just like you said, Devorah, at your kitchen table, wherever we are, wherever we're celebrating, wherever we are meeting and gathering, we need to have this at as a priority, because the other side is planning and prioritizing to strip us of every right. And they're not stopping with just gutting the Voting Rights Act.
Nope.
I have said to people over and over and over again, do not get distracted. I believe that a lot of this stuff they were doing with the migrants and all of that sort of stuff was a distraction to get our attention off of what they really were trying to do and are trying to do, is to roll the clock back on our community and our power, period. I believe that that's what that is all about.
So when you take a look at it too, Mark, it can't even be considered ironic that the founding fathers, when they came to this country and drafted the Constitution, it was to walk away from monarchy. They said, we don't want that. We want to create something that we control, that allows the people to have a voice, where the sovereignty lies in the hands of the people, not in one authoritarian voice. So here we are today, 250 years later, and we're up against the same wall, the threat of authoritarianism. So now is a great time for us to reflect, re-examine, and recommit to the democracy that we say that we believe in and revere. If this is the governance that you desire, then now is the time to stand up and protect and be a good custodian of our democracy. And we do that by informing the next generation, and you do that by engaging civically and going to the polls to vote. Do not sit this one out, the same as some 90 million people sat out on the last presidential election, which could have made a huge difference. Sitting out does not count. You've got to be in the game. You've got to make sure your ballot matters. You got to make sure it counts. You got to make it count by dropping it in the box. So all I can say is that we will see you on election day, and hopefully see you out in the field, encouraging people to get out there and vote. Our lives depend on it. Our democracy depends on it.
Devorah Crable of knowyourpowervote.us and Dr. Joanne Roberts, both thank you all very much for coming in to share this with us. This cannot be our last conversation about this. We have to continue to collaborate together and to make sure that we see this, that we don't stop until every single person is registered to vote. No one left behind. No one left behind. And I think that this moment is a great moment for us to motivate and to get people. I think that there are people who are paying attention now that had never paid attention before.
Yep,
I think it will be an easier communication for us now to communicate with those persons than before this hideous act and decision by the Supreme Court took place. So,
okay.
Go ahead.
I want to ask every civics teacher, every high school teacher, every principal, and every superintendent that's listening to this to provide the opportunity for every eligible student under your leadership the opportunity to register to vote. Every civics teacher began now to explain to your students why voting is so important. Talk about what's going on at the Supreme Court. Talk about voter registration. Talk about what's happening in Louisiana, so that the students began to understand that there's a history and a background that got us to this point and the power they have to help change their future. I'm a former superintendent, I'm a former principal, I'm a former teacher, and I wanted to share with you just a moment the important role that you have in shaping the next generation of leaders.
All right. Well, listen, I want to ask the two of you, and I just thought about this, that we meet, my political action committee is on Thursday nights by Zoom. And I think that this is so important that it needs to be shared with the group. If you all would be available Thursday evening to address the political action committee 10 by 10 to win, I would really, really appreciate that. Devorah, you can let me know by email if you and Dr. Roberts may be available. We meet from 6:30 to 8 every Thursday night by Zoom. I can send you the link. You actually have the link, but I can send you the link by email this time.
Yes. Well, actually, I got the two confused. The 10 by 10 versus your show tonight for the people. Yeah. So my mistake. But can I say this? I think we have our slogan.
Yes.
Don't stop till the last ballot drops.
I love it.
From Mark Wallace.
I love it. Don't stop till the last ballot drops. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's you.
Yeah.
We put your name on that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna get the graphic artist to put that together. No, we put your name on it.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Devorah Crable and Dr. Joanne Roberts, both. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. This is a very important mission. This is just a pause. We're going to continue working together on this and making sure that Senator Harman gets this to the floor of the Senate and getting it passed. I don't see any reason why there should be any delay. I know there's a bit of a process, but they can move things when they get ready to get them done based on how they prioritize them. And this should be a priority. LG Sims is my next door neighbor, and I'll be nudging him and telling him to go see Senator Harman and tell him to move this bill forward and get it passed.
Well, send him our regards, because
this bill should be passed before and signed into law before Juneteenth.
Yes, before May 31st, they leave.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
All right. That's Devorah Crable and Sister Joanne Roberts talking about the Jesse L. Jackson Young Voter Empowerment Law. And that is so that we can make sure that every young person coming out of high school with their diploma and their voter registration card before they get out of high school, so that they can be empowered to vote. I think that I just want to reemphasize to us is to not be distracted by all of these other things that this Trump administration and his sycophants and those people who have just completely abandoned and abdicated their responsibility in Congress. Do not take your eye off of the ball. The mission is making sure that we get every single person eligible registered to vote. Make sure that every person in your household is registered. Verify your voter registration. Make sure that your children in their households. Make this a family initiative that you are going to ensure that everybody is registered to vote. Voting is essential. It is necessary, and this is a must. We are in a very critical time. I know we're going to overcome it. I know we're going to overcome it because we have the power to overcome it. And we have it in our hands. They cannot stop us. They cannot stop us. The only people who can stop us is us. And we cannot afford to have anybody sitting on the sideline. There are no second stringers. Everybody is a first stringer. That means that everybody plays in the game. Everybody is on the field. There is nobody sitting on the sideline. We don't have any time for despair or to thinking that the game is over or that the game is rigged. It may be rigged, but guess what? Black folks have overcome all kinds of obstacles. We are well versed in overcoming and getting over hurdles. This is just another hurdle, and we'll get over that hurdle. We will soar over that hurdle. There is no obstacle that we haven't. If our foreparents and our ancestors overcame what they had to overcome, this is just another stepping stone. This is like a little thorn for us. It's a big deal, but this is something that we will overcome and we shall be victorious. Now, the difference is we might be the minority in numbers, but we are the difference between success and failure at the ballot box. Joe Biden, who was a great president, despite what anybody would like to say, was a great president. But Joe Biden could not have been that great president had it not been for Black women saving him in the primary and resurrecting his campaign, because he was dead on arrival going into South Carolina. It was Black women who resuscitated that campaign, and was Black women and Black people who took him over that made him to become the president of the United States. He became the president of the United States. He was a 46th president, but let me tell you this, and he did a phenomenal job. Unfortunately, this number 47 is doing all that he can to derail and unravel any of those policies. Why? Because many of those policies that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris passed, Kamala Harris' fingerprint was all over the drafting of many of those policies. The student debt loan forgiveness, that came from Kamala Harris. And let me tell you how that came from Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was a United States senator, and she drafted a bill that was targeting historically Black colleges and universities, Black students, to reduce or eliminate their debt. The bill got passed, but there were those who took and went to federal court, and the court overturned it because they said it was a race-based bill. Well, Kamala Harris, with that experience, found out, or through her understanding of the law and that decision, what they did was, as vice president, she and the president crafted the executive order that included Pell Grants in student debt loan forgiveness. And why is that important? Because 95% of all Black college students use Pell Grants to go to college. And so when that got included in the bill, it disproportionately represented Black students for their student loan forgiveness. That came from Kamala Harris. So for those who would like to, try to minimize Kamala Harris and her brilliance and her ability, are either people who don't read, or people who don't care to read, or they just don't want to accept reality. But my point is that did not happen had it not been for Black women, and had it not been for the Black vote. There would have not been a Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. So we are the difference makers, and they know this, which is why they are using the Supreme Court and every other redistricting tactic that they can to try to diminish the Black vote. That's how powerful we are. That is why I continue to say to us here. Now, I'm not even going to give much attention to those few Black folks who are so ignorantly bitter that they want to attack the Democratic Party and say that the Democratic Party is this villain to Black folks. Well, none of them can bring forth in the last 60 years or the last 30 years, not a single piece of legislation, not a single piece of legislation. I'm not even talking about two, not a single piece of legislation that the Republicans and the MAGAs and the extremists have brought forth and passed that benefited the average working person in this country or the average Black family in this country. So I don't spend a lot of time talking with people who, are just angry and allowing for their frustration to get in the way of their better senses. That I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. But for those of us who understand the power and the importance of the moment, that whatever manipulations that they're trying to do, what they cannot do is that they cannot win when we show up to vote. Why? Because we represent, when I say we, those of us of the progressive Democratic voting apparatus, the conservative voting is less than 40% of the entire electorate in this country. Less than 40%. And when we look at the power of our vote and the power of even the poor and the low wage voter in this country, that represents more than 40% of the electorate. So we need to make sure that we are reaching to each and every person that we can to help them to understand where their power is. And the power of their vote determines their destiny. And we have to look at this outside of ourselves. I know that it is a personal thing, but we have to look at it outside of ourselves as a corporate thing, because when we do things collectively and corporately, then that means that we lift, everyone gets lifted. Matter of fact, the better that poor people and working people and Black people do in this country, the people at the top do just that much better. Because why? They control most of industry. They control most of the things that we're going to be buying and their goods and services. But you have a handful of people. Now, this is just my theory and my belief, that you have a handful of racists, ideologists, of racist white men whose numbers are shrinking because many of their children or their grandchildren don't think the way that they think as it relates to race. Some of them do, but that number is shrinking, and they are doing all that they can to try to consolidate and hold on to power. That's what I believe that is. All you have to do is look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers. This is them with their fear and their insecurity of the idea that Black folks would try to do to them what they have done to Black folks with their racist ideology and their indoctrination. We don't possess that kind of hate, nor do we spend much time even thinking about that. But they are so caught up and they're so insecure in their own evilness that this is what drives them. This is what's driving them. They know that they are in the minority. They understand that they are in the minority. So they are trying to wield power so that their power can suppress the will of the people. But we are not going to stand by, and we are not going to allow it to happen. Now, for those of you, again, that want to be defectors, I'm sorry that that is the way that you have allowed for your minds to be poisoned, and that's the way that you choose to think, and you're entitled to think that way. It's perfectly okay. Unfortunately, that's what you want to do, but it is okay. You're in the minority, and you can have that. That's why when I have people who are commenting with ignorant statements that are baseless statements on my social media, I don't even respond to it, because what is the point in me responding to things that don't have any real substance to it? I'm only interested in engaging with people, even if we disagree. I'm interested in engaging with people who want to work to solve problems. I am certainly not interested in people who just want to throw rocks and who just want to make noise. I have no interest in that, nor will I invest any kind of time. I'll let you just make whatever noise that you want to make, whatever you want to post on my social media page. If that's what helps you and that's what gets it for you, you can have at it. But you will not get a response from me. I am only engaging with people, I'm only engaging with people who want to resolve problems. And there's a very big difference between people who want to resolve problems than people who just want to make noise. Those people, I am not interested in wasting any of the time that I commit to this and have, because the work that we have to do corporately is far too important. And we have to be able to, as I say, pick our battles. And I choose to pick battles about trying to solve problems and trying to advance our people and trying to make sure that Black people are equitably represented and that we are corporately working together from education to economics. Those are the bookends and everything in between. That's what's important. That's what's important. You know, this idea that people want to waste their time on talking about, you know, illegals, which we all belong to God. So there's nobody that's illegal. And if you want to spend all your time focusing on somebody that has not made a single solitary policy that has impacted your life, then you choose to do that. I'm sorry that you would choose to do that, but that's the truth of the matter. Because none of the migrants or the immigrants or the illegals or whatever name, label that you want to affix to them, they don't set policy. The people who set policies are some very powerful, white, mostly men who are racist. And let me make a clarification here. There is no such thing as a Black racist. Now, we can be prejudiced, but there is no such thing as a Black racist. Why? Because we don't have the power to do to white folks what white folks have done to Black folks for centuries. The systemic racism that exists in public policy for centuries. White men wrote the Declaration of Independence. White men wrote the United States Constitution. White men wrote the state of Illinois' Constitution, and every other constitution, state constitution in this country were written by white men to support white men's ideology as to how they believe that the government should function. Black folks don't have that kind of power. So stop calling Black folks racist, because Black folks don't have the power to be racist. You need three elements. You need prejudice plus privilege plus power. We have one of those, or the potential of one of those, and that is to be prejudiced. We don't have privilege, and we certainly don't have the power to do to a group of people what white folks have done to Black folks. So understand that. Now, nor would we if we did have power and privilege and prejudice. Would we want to do to those people what they have done to us? All we're asking for people to do is to leave us alone and allow for us to flourish like they are flourishing. But they are not going to do that. Just understand that. They are not going to do it. It's very clear. If it hasn't been clear to you before, now it is very clear that they are not going to do it. But I don't want you to consume in your belly and in your heart and in your head hate. Don't poison your being with hate. Fill your mind with the thoughts of productivity to move our community forward, to move our people forward. That is how we resist against hate. You resist hate. Don't encompass hate in your mind and in your spirit. That's how you fight hate, is by resisting it. You neutralize hate with love. Now, I'm not saying you got to be in a love affair with your enemy, but don't adopt the oppressor's philosophies for our liberation. If we have that, we have to drop that. And some of that we may have, inadvertently adopted. But don't adopt the oppressor's philosophy and ideology and hate for our liberation. I don't believe that there's a more forgiving people on the planet. There's not a more forgiving people on the planet, and there's not a more hated person or people on the planet. But that's our plight. But we've been able to overcome that hate time and time and time again. And we're going to overcome it again today. And we're going to save this country from itself again. We're going to save it from itself again and push back against this oppression and this suppression that they are trying to invoke. All right, now listen, we are coming up on the holiday next week. I want to make sure that you all call Senator Harman, 217-782-8176. It is in the chat. Make sure that you call Senator Harman. You're going to be able to see this again on you can go on YouTube. You'll be able to see it on Facebook. I'm going to reloop it again. I want to thank my guest for coming on, Tom Tresher, who came on to talk about the RIFL Act that they are working to get passed in the General Assembly. And that is to hold the gun manufacturers accountable and responsible for their products. And certainly want to thank Devorah Crable of knowyourpowervote.us and Dr. Joanne Roberts for coming on to talk about the Jesse L. Jackson Young Voter Empowerment Law that is going to be passed in the General Assembly. Now, look, don't just call once. I would ask you to pick up the phone to call your senator or to call Senator Harman's office or to get other people. Now, you know my 10 by 10 to win philosophy, right? You call 10 times or call 10 senators. Get someone else to call 10 times or to call 10 senators. Call once a day. Call once a day and tell them to pass the Jesse Lewis Jackson Young Voter Empowerment Bill. Once a day, every day, call and have your voice and leave your message. Send an email. Do them both. And let's make this flood the General Assembly. Plug up all of the lines. I'll be sharing this and I'll be making phone calls tomorrow. I am going to call. My senator lives right next door to me. I am not going to go knock on his door. I am going to call his office and I am going to say to him, please make sure that this bill gets passed. And I'm going to call it every day. I'm going to call it every day. I'm going to call my state rep every day. And I would ask you to do the same thing. Call Senator Harman and call your state senator and call your state representative. Call them to tell them to pass the Jesse Lewis Jackson Young Voter Empowerment Bill. What I didn't get is the bill number. Hopefully I can get the bill number from Devorah before we gotta go. I know that we're a little late. Want to thank you all for tuning in to the program tonight. Next week, we will not be on the air next week because it is the Memorial Day holiday. And, well, we may be, but I will certainly let you know in advance. All right, we're going over a little bit, but please call your senator, call your state representative. They've already passed it in the House, so call your state senator. You don't have to call your state representative, but call your state senator and call Senator Harman at 217-782-8176. It's in the chat, and it'll be there, and this program will reloop itself. I want to thank you all again for coming on the program, and we will see you again real soon.